Welcome to Prophetic Chronicles. I am your host, Chris Reed, here from Morning Star Ministries in Fort Mill, South Carolina. And today we truly have a special program for you. Terry, thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, this is what's so unique is on Sunday, March the 10th, I shared a prophetic dream from the stage here at Morning Star about a rebirth of America. And I'll share the experience here in just a second, but I'd had the dream the day before, the Saturday, in between Friday night and Saturday morning.
Yes.
And then I heard from you, and I'd also heard from others that the same day I shared this, you shared the encounter on the same Sunday that I did
Yes. Yes.
with no coordination, and we even had the same experience, or we had this experience the same time.
Yes. Exactly. Yes.
And
That's right,
so
Chris.
you're in Tennessee, we're here on the border of the Carolinas. We didn't talk or plan
Yeah.
anything, and it's like to have the experience the same day and then to share it the same Sunday, it
Yeah.
just seemed too important to not talk about.
Amen.
I encourage you, tell somebody about this program on morningstartv.com. This is a special edition of Prophetic Chronicles because this isn't me interviewing somebody that I gave a prophetic word to. This is two people who had a similar experience. And so I I had this intense dream on Saturday morning, March the 9th, about this coming eclipse. It's just right upon us here in April. And that in this dream, the summary of it is that this eclipse was the triggering or the beginning of an awakening, but there was a lot of turbulence that followed shortly after the April eclipse. And the period of the dream went from April 2024 until July 2025. And, July the 11th in the dream was highlighted. But here's what I wrote down. I said, I was moving fast in time, past, present, and future. I was moving fast in time into April 2024 with this eclipse that is, crossing over Texas and going through like 12 Nineveh cities named Nineveh in the United States. People have been talking about it. I know a lot of people have heard about it. And in the dream, I knew that somehow Texas was pulled into this. But around the time of this eclipse happening, there was a metaphorical conception that took place. And in the dream, somehow I knew this woman was with child, and the conception had happened around the time of this eclipse. And about 6 months into her pregnancy, which would have it, September or October of 2024, some sort of traumatic event almost threw her into false delivery, a traumatic delivery. I'm sure you've known, I have two of people that have,
Yes.
women that have had car accidents and they've been pregnant or something, and it's tragically thrown them into early labor. Well, in this dream, it was something like, an epic October surprise. And what that means, people usually say something unexpected that happens right before the election. And I
Yes.
knew that it wasn't limited to October or even September, but it was something traumatic that the whole nation saw it, experienced it, was affected by it, and it it triggered like Braxton Hicks contractions. And
Mhm.
it was a short time before the November 2024 US elections.
Yes.
Now, this event, pre-election, caused absolute chaos in the nation. It affected the elections even into November of 2024, and it went on even after the election. So it started pre-election, during the election and even after the election. In the dream, I knew that President Biden had fizzled out and they had tried their hardest to prop him up to keep things going the same. But this event that happened 6 months into the pregnancy, conception started in April, sometime in the late summer, early fall, this pre-election event happens and it intensified the division that was already in the nation to a very intense and scary level. And this chaos went on from the end of summer, fall 2024 until July of 2025. Now, somehow in the dream, this was interesting. I went into the past. So first I went, this was March the 9th. I went forward into April of 2024 in ahead of time. Then I went back and somehow I was in 1968. And in the dream, I was given an old newspaper. It was like one of those major national newspapers. And it said, quote, assassination of two major leaders in the same year of the Chicago Convention, unquote.
Yeah.
And anybody that knows their history knows that Robert Kennedy, RFK, and Martin Luther King Jr. were both tragically killed in 1968. And in 1968, when two of those national leaders were killed tragically, the Democratic National Convention was held in Chicago. Well, I didn't even know before the dream, by the way, that the Democratic National Convention is being held in Chicago this year in 2024, just
Wow.
like in 1968. And so I thought, I felt a warning, to associate those two major leaders in culture, in politics, that were taken out in the same year the convention was in Chicago. But so then this pre-election event comes and you have this chaos in the economy, in the news, in the streets, chaos. But in the midst of all of this, America was having this awakening, a real awakening of an evil and corruption going on in America. And it was like the vast majority of the nation, Terry, said, we can never let something like this happen again. We just can't.
Yeah.
And the dream ended, and it was July 2025. And it seemed like by that time, a lot of the chaos had slowed down, at least for a time, and the nation started to heal. So the conception started in April of 2024. 6 months in, 5, 6 months in, of the pregnancy that started in April, you have September, October. A traumatic event happens, throws it into intense birth pains, false delivery.
Yes.
The baby is then, of course, born 9 months after April, which is January 2025. Now, what was interesting, I saw the baby being born in January 2025, and it was wrapped in an American flag. Like if you've ever been in a maternity ward, and the babies are born, they wrap them in those blankets, they put them in those little beds that have their name tags above their head, and the baby's name was America. But the baby that was born in January of 2025, even though it was born from all the trauma that it, experienced, it had to be kept in an incubator for care up until July 2025. So for 6 months after birth in January, and for 6 months till July, it had to be put in an incubator, but the baby was named America. And so from that, I just concluded this was a 40-week long metaphorical pregnancy. It was painful. It was traumatic. It started in April 2024, connected to this, this solar event that's coming, this cross over Texas in this eclipse. 9 months of pregnancy. Something happened before the election. The baby's born in the midst of chaos in January, and then it's kept in an incubator for 6 months until July of 2025. So that's my the dream that I had, I felt it was significant. You know, we have put up here on the screen here, everyone will be able to see James Nesbitt did a painting after you heard me share this dream of the timeline of events that you can see there that they're adding on the screen. But we're going to go to commercial break. When we come back, I want to hear from you, Terry, and we're just going to compare and see just what God is really saying. We'll be right back after these messages. Well, welcome back to Prophetic Chronicles, and I'm joined by my friend, Terry Bennett. Now, Terry, I want to hear from you about your experience.
Okay, Chris. So it's interesting, as you said earlier in the program, on March the 9th, I had the Lord speak to me, and actually had a visionary experience, which I've named The Road Ahead for America, rather than just the USA, for specific reasons. So on the 9th, I received this beginning visionary experience that has continued as we go down the road. I'm seeing further and further down the road. So, and then on the 10th, same Sunday you shared, I shared publicly here in Van Leer, Tennessee, at our Sunday morning meeting, this experience. So I will read it to you. And I do believe what you saw in the dream and what I saw in the visionary experience in these parts play off of each other beautifully and perfectly. As I was listening to you share more detail, I'm thinking, wow. So my wife, Donna, and I were driving in our SUV eastward on Interstate 40, 40 being significant, as you know, according to your dream. And I-40 runs through Dixon County where we live. So we were driving on I-40 eastward in a time of the day where the sun was setting, which I thought was significant, and it was more dusky dark, not completely dark, but dusky dark. We came quickly to an area of roadway on I-40 that was so full of potholes that we had to slow down to almost a complete stop. We began to drive very slowly through the potholes to get past them and go further down the roadway. I knew that the potholes represented deep issues and problems nationally within our nation in the areas of economy. Also, it represented treachery, governmental agendas, banking controls, and malpractice of justice within our nation. I knew that because the potholes had names down in them of these things. That's how I knew it. One, the biggest pothole we saw, we had to veer around it, was called the national debt. So I knew this as well. The Lord made it very clear to me that what I was seeing was all governmental issues in our nation. That's what I was told about it. There's other things, but the primary reason for all of this were governmental issues. And that was the issue we were looking at. I could see that these and many other extremely important issues had not been rightly nor righteously repaired, but simply like throwing unpacked asphalt into a few of them and leaving them. The effect was basically not helping, but making things worse. Many of the deeper holes, which had not been repaired, were from systematic long-term problems through, I think, through several administrations looking to our past. So instead of truly addressing the problems and issues economically, governmentally, spiritually over recent years, we have instead compounded them through mismanagement of resources, personal evil agendas within federal and some state leadership. So the Lord told me in all of this that he said that it was impossible to give proper oversight to this nation of people if the leaders have no personal oversight, consequences, nor checks of their actions and behavior in their personal lives. That's what the Lord told me about it.
Wow.
That would go for the church as well, I do believe. So moving forward, the potholes had names in the bottoms. National debt was the deepest pothole that I saw. We couldn't go through it. We had to go around it. But also border control, banking systems, overspending, personal agendas, injustice rather than justice, overtaxation, foreign relations, foreign dependence for various supply and demand, breakdown and offshore movement of important American industries, etc., were the potholes. In the experience, it was about 100 yards long as I was looking at it. I didn't see that number. I could just look at it. I used to be a surveyor, civil engineer, so I have a pretty good eye for distances. I could tell we're looking at about 300 or so feet. May relate to days. Not positive. But I'm pretty sure the I-40 relates to weeks, like what you saw.
Yeah, 40 weeks of pregnancy, right?
Exactly right. The things that were unimportant or important, and the most important, there was primary failure in our nation temporarily. And it was due, Chris, this was clear to me from the Lord, it was due to what Psalm 2 says, that our nation, its leaders, have taken their stand against the Christ. That was very clear to me. And God's judgment coming was due to the Psalm 2 dynamic. Instead of kissing the Son, we have resisted him. So I'll kind of rush on in this, if that's okay. I knew that this would be a temporary, short-term thing, but followed by more long-term, and if I can say this, much worse. So this is not the major thing yet, but it's a step towards that major thing. Again, this will not be, however, the big and foretold collapse within our nation. Instead, the Lord said these things right to me. There will be fractured functions, the breaking of certain structures, and breakdown of some capabilities. I saw that like a human body and the breaking of bones in the human body. Structurally, there would be structural issues in our nation. I've actually thought it was interesting of what just happened to the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore and its collapse. Things like that in our systems. Secondly, functional disabilities, the limited restrictions of movement for a time. Safety will be a concern. Thirdly, a disabling of functions. These are progressing. Unimportant and important functions. Allocations of finances will be temporarily restrained of necessity. Fourthly, disabled functions. Supply and demand will be difficult. Businesses, some will close. Some governmental entities will be halted briefly, especially in their funding and their releasing of funds. And though short term, this will be a hard blow. Difficulties in this time will be real. They will be felt and experienced. Still, this would be short in duration compared to the much greater collapse and difficult times. Let me turn the page. So the key will be trusting in our God. That will be critical, along with listening to his voice and his directives. Perhaps the greatest fear we'll face is not wanting to believe God's warnings and what God is actually saying. It's easier to not believe it, but it won't stop it. We must heed his spoken rhemas and discern properly his true voice from other voices. The true fear of the Lord must be greater than these natural things which can cause fear. The fear of the Lord must become our wisdom. So that's that experience. If I have time, if you want me to, I can move forward to more that ties in with your dream if that's
Absolutely. Go ahead.
so. There was another part of this that I did not share on the 10th because it continued to unfold even over the past couple of weeks. I mentioned it to you. So on the road ahead, past this short-term thing, there was a stretch of highway that seemed good. We were able to pick up speed again. But then I found myself no longer in my vehicle, standing on the banks of what I've come to call a deluge. I-40, and I knew it wasn't just limited to I-40, was completely washed out. Bridges were gone. And it was a darkness of night, unlike the first experience where it was more like twilight. This was a darkness of night. I could not see across the deluge. So in the deluge, there were things rushing past me in these turbulent waters at night that I could see going past me. One of them was a broken flagpole with the American flag. And I knew that it represented there were no longer 50 states. The flag was torn, it was tattered, and there were bullet holes in the flag. I saw also an old wooden dead tree, no foliage, come by me with 3 branches on it. And written on each of the 3 branches were executive, legislature, and judicial government. It was dead, and it washed past me. I saw automobiles washed past me. I knew that was talking about the automobile industry. I watched as a big sign came by me that said Banks of America. It washed past me. Kroger's sign washed past me. Insurance signs washed past me, and etc. Much debris from this deluge that was in our nation came washing past me. I wept. That's how impacting it was, especially when I saw the American flag, because I could not help but think of all who have given their lives for this really republic. So then the Lord, moving forward, speaks to me to listen to what he wants me to hear that's actually going on inside the waters. He said the spiritual dynamic of the waters. Chris, this is hard to hear. It was hard for me to hear. But I mean, there were people in such states of rage and lawlessness and anger and bitterness at one another, at our government, just whoever they focused it upon. A spirit of murder temporarily gripped our nation, and it was chaos within our nation. People were screaming. I heard women screaming, children screaming, men screaming in utter rage. And as bad as that was, and it was bad, it got to this point so bad that they all realized we're just going to kill everybody if we don't stop. And they began to cry to one another for mercy. Have mercy upon us, to one another. But it didn't stop it. And after a while, they began to cry out, this is beautiful. Have mercy upon us, O God. And when that reached a crescendo, coming up out of the waters, I heard the audible voice of God while standing on that bank say, and mercy will triumph over judgment in your nation. That's what he said. And so daylight began to come up. It began to get daylight, which I knew was the significance of a new day had dawned. I was able to see across that turbulent waters like I couldn't before to the other embankment. And there on the other embankment was another flagpole with a new flag. And in the center of a white background, on that flag, was an evergreen tree, unlike the dead tree I saw float by, was an evergreen tree with new life. And in the center of that evergreen tree was a white star. Written above it in evergreen language and below it was the New Republic of America. Above, New Republic, below, of America. And so I'm looking at that one star in the center, the white, goldish white, by the way, star that represented the New Republic. Around the perimeter of that flag was a 5-inch, representing the grace of God, a 5-inch wide gold strip. And within that gold strip were in evergreen stars representing the new states of the new republic.
Wow.
That was up on the flag, not all the way. Above that was a Gideon, a small war flag. And in it was blue and green. And written again in green was, "We will trust in our God." And that was the new day. So
That is awesome. That
yes.
is awesome. Terry, it's amazing how fast these shows go. But if you can, let me know the dates and the address of the conference being held at your
Yes.
church quickly in
Yes.
July.
It can be accessed on our website, Messengers of Shiloh, but it is in July. We're looking at the times. I'm sorry, Chris.
That's okay. 12th, 13th, and 14th, I think, isn't it?
Yes, 12th, 13th, and 14th, right, guys? So Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Saturday night. And of course, you will be sharing, Josiah Bennett and myself will be sharing at that conference, Chris.
Well, I'm excited about it. And if you're near Van Leer, right? Van Leer,
Yes.
Tennessee,
Van Leer,
visit
Tennessee.
Terry's church, Messengers of Shiloh. He's a dear friend and a true prophetic voice. Terry, thank you for joining me today, and say hello to the family.
I
And I
will.
look forward to seeing you soon.
I love you, my dear friend.
Love you too.
Bye-bye.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining
Bless
us
you.
on Prophetic Chronicles today.
Thank you for watching Prophetic Chronicles with Chris Reed. We hope you've enjoyed seeing and hearing how the Holy Spirit is impacting people's lives today in tangible, supernatural ways. This show was produced by Morning Star Ministries in Fort Mill, South Carolina. Please come visit Morning Star Fellowship Church on the old PTL Heritage USA grounds in beautiful Fort Mill, South Carolina. Or write us at Heritage International Ministries, 375 Starlight Drive, Fort Mill, South Carolina, 29715. Also, check out our Morning Star conferences and online store at morningstarministries.org. Follow our Morning Star Ministries page on Facebook, or call us at 1-800-542-0278. Thank you for watching, and please join us again soon for more supernatural ministry with Chris Reed on Prophetic Chronicles.